Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is part of like a little mini series of shows that I'm doing about mental health awareness. I've done this kind of thing before, and often it's kind of happened by accident. So actually, the way it started, if you'll permit me to just say before we fully introduce our guest, my friend Eddie reached out to me, and he just said out of nowhere, we both know Eddie, do you want to do a show about this? And I was quite surprised because there's like a million things I could talk to you about this guy. Same with today's guest. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. And then, of course, the ideas kind of spiral from there. You're like, another person hears about that, and then they want to talk about it. And our guest today actually wrote a book about mental health. And I was like, right, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do like a mental health month, something like that. I'm still planning it, but that's where we're at. So today's guest is an author, a musician. His name is Robert Hurst. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, great to be here.
No, it's great to have you, man. I was super excited to see that post on. So make sure after this, I'll include the links in the bio. But on your Instagram, there's this brilliant picture of you with your book like beaming, and I'm like,
yeah.
It's huge. You know, it's because it's an academic book as well, right?
Yeah,
and it's. So like a lot of time and research and everything has gone into it. And obviously talking about mental health from any level, be it personal, scientific, you know, it's a lot, especially in today's times where I feel like it's probably needed more than ever. What was your, let's say, thought process behind like actually making this book? Where did that come from? Like, why did you decide to write this book?
it's kind of a long story. I'll try and keep it brief, but
Please tell the long one.
So I guess the overall picture is that I've just always thought that creativity is really good for me. So that's something I've always been aware of, right? I've always been around creativity in some way, shape, or form. So like my dad's a drummer. My mum does a million and one different creative things. She does baking. She's always doing something creative. So it's kind of just been a normal part of my life. And whenever I've engaged with it, especially through like music and through writing, I've always found like some peace in that, some solace, some like expression, some catharsis. So it's always been in my mind thinking, right, okay, I think creativity is great. I think it's my kind of like first aid kit for like emotional stuff, basically. So, you know, I went and did a psychology degree, and you got to do a dissertation. And I was thinking, I'd love to do creativity, but I didn't have the right idea at the time, and the scope of a dissertation for an undergraduate was pretty small. So I just left it and did something else. When it came to doing my master's dissertation, I'd done a bit of research already with the professor at the Uni of Bolton, where I was doing my degree, into what are the factors behind recovery, basically. So mental health recovery, what goes into that? Not to try and come up with some sort of universal model, because there's no one universal kind of catch-all. There's no magic pill of like, do all this stuff and you'll suddenly feel better. But kind of looking into what are the factors that might help someone. And we're doing all this research, and we looked at these 36 first-hand accounts of mental health recovery. So 36 people who'd written their own story. And story is a big part of the kind of research that I do. That's what I'm interested in. And, you know, we found loads of good stuff in there, but we really felt the creativity in these pieces of writing, in these stories. And as I did a bit of research around that, I realized no one was really looking into creativity for mental health recovery, not in the way that I was seeing it unfold in the research we were doing. And so I needed to do a dissertation. So it was like, okay, let's look more into this. Let's interview people about creativity and their mental health recovery. And then the professor, he's called Professor Jerome Carson. He's an ambitious guy. So I think you get some academics who are like really feet planted firmly on the ground. They say, oh, well, the rules and regulations say you've got to do this and this and this. And I think let's be really practical and let's think about this. Jerome's very much, and I mean this in the best way possible. His head's way up in the clouds. He's a dreamer, and so he goes, Robert, why don't we make this into a book? So I'm there, kind of like what 23, doing a master's, and I'm just like, yeah, sure, whatever, yeah, right. And he's like, no, really, let's like, we're gonna interview people. We'll get permission to see if we can like write those stories up, and they can be in the book as well. Like, because usually with research, you interview people and you get like little snippets. But there's kind of this movement to try and bring the full story in as well, which I think is really valuable. And so the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, that would be great. And then before I know it, I'd written a proposal, and then it got accepted, and then I was like, oh God, now I've got to actually do this thing. And then it's a series of ideas that I thought were fun that kind of got out of hand, got away from me. But yeah, like you say, it's a long process. So this took kind of 3 years from conception to getting it in my hands for various reasons.
I feel like the clue to obviously the results, I suppose, of the studies is in the title, creative mental health recovery, and as you outlined there in the beginning, your own personal experience. It's something I can resonate with completely. The amount of times I've picked up a guitar when I've just felt low and just sang. Yep. I've done it on live streams. I've done it. Sometimes I've shown up at open mics and just sang, and I was having like the worst time possible. You wouldn't know it, but I was. There's actually a photo I posted maybe March last year, and I was going through all sorts.
Yeah.
And I put in the caption, because there's a series of photos taken by my friend Mizzy, and I was like, you wouldn't know it, but when this photo was taken, I was going through one of the worst times of my life, and I was just laughing in the photo, and it reminded me of like every single photo I saw of a creative who had like committed suicide at some point. And it's like sometimes even like creativity can't save you.
Totally. This is it's not like a silver bullet by any means.
But it's interesting, like, what do you think it is about the creative process that actually offers some degree of recovery, or at least escapism, when it comes to mental health?
I think it's that word escapism's a big one. I think if you're engaged in a creative process, you're almost kind of, I don't know, I don't know if you agree with this. It's hard to put into academic terms, but there's like, if I'm really switched on into what I'm doing creatively, I just lose track of time. I lose track of where I am. I'm just in the moment, like really, really present with what I'm doing. I think that's a kind of escapism.
I know what you mean. It's like zeroing in on something. Like, this is exactly what I do. When I'm going through something, I'm like work mode.
Okay. Yeah.
Throw yourself into. I know sometimes it can be unhealthy. I've had times where people are like, you should stop everything you're doing and go into therapy or do this, that. And I'm like, look, that might work for certain people, but if I take my foot off the gas pedal now, like I will have a breakdown. Like I have to work. And through the process of doing that in the background, your subconscious is always working. This is what people forget. Totally. Like, it's your conscious brain is not going to be sitting there going, if I really sit and think about this, I'll figure it out. It's like, no, you will not. The answer will come to you when you're out fishing somewhere, or on a run, or on stage one time, or you're sitting there with the friends. Like, it'll come and you'll be like, no, that's what it's about. And it'll be like 4 months down the line.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. The best example, I've given this before, but I really feel like it's actually quite a powerful mental health thing. Have you ever seen The Notebook?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
movie, yeah.
When they break up, like, for good, and they go their separate ways, the wife obviously goes off and marries the wrong person, does the wrong thing, convinces herself she's happy, etc., right? But she's obviously supposed to be with this guy, right? Anyway, his way of dealing with it is that a typical old-fashioned man, like, don't talk about it, oh, I'm gonna go away and just work frantically on this thing, and
Yeah.
he gets this house, and he obsesses over this
Hmm.
house, of building this house, to the point where, like, I think he ends up in the local newspaper for some reason. I can't remember exactly why, and that's how she gets wind of him, and she
Hmm.
comes back and she visits him, and then the story continues, right? But I remember just that process, like him working on the house, like it doesn't fix the problem,
Mm.
but it occupies his mind, and he's able to sort of continue, and he's hurting, but he's moving forward.
Sure. I
Like,
like that.
you know what I mean? If she did not come back to him, maybe there's, something on the other end of that, where he might have met someone else, something might have worked out. You could never really tell, but I feel like the process of creating things and seeing them through to the end, and then looking at where you're at, is really powerful. I mean,
Mm.
like, I have an album coming out soon, right?
Hmm.
And I went over the footage I'd recorded for this, like, behind the scenes doc, right?
Mm.
And obviously, as you're editing, you have to sit there and watch and be like,
Yeah.
this is going to make it, this isn't, blah blah blah. But I was just sitting there and actually just watching it, and just kind of reflecting on
Mm.
how much time has gone into it.
Yeah.
And then also, like, the process of writing these songs over the last 4 years, what they mean. It's funny how, like, some of it can take on new meanings, or can still hold some relevance in your life despite you having written it years ago.
Totally.
I guess my point with all of this is the journey over
Mm.
time with whatever you're doing, and invest in yourself in a project. Taking it back to your book, like,
Mm.
3-year process, what would you say was, like, the main takeaway for you, like the main lesson that you learned from it all?
Ooh. I think allow it time. So there were times when it was kind of dragging, or stuff had come up that was getting in the way of doing the work and getting it finished. And they were really frustrating times, but I think there was no rush really. The publishers were really kind of chilled about it. They were like, just give us a new deadline and we'll keep checking in. They were kind of like, let it's finished when it's finished, which was really cool of them. And yeah, I think taking some of that pressure off, because it ended up taking 3 years. I don't really care. Like I sit and I hold it in my hands and I'm like, hey, this is amazing. This is like, yeah, something I'm really proud of. And it took 3 years. It took 3 years. So yeah, it's a weird sort of lesson to take from it, maybe, but I think just it will get there. If you want it to get there, it will get there. If it takes a while, maybe it's meant to take a while.
I think about this a lot too. Like,
Mm.
when I look at my life and things working out, so to speak,
Hmm.
in terms of what I want, I do wonder sometimes if maybe it's all just timing, and
Yeah, yeah.
that's the key. Maybe you're just not ready. You haven't
This is
learned the
it. Yeah,
lesson yet. You haven't met the
yeah.
right people yet. You're not doing the right thing yet. Like, right now, I'm about to jump into a full-time job,
Hmm.
and it's frustrating for me, because I've been down this road before. I've worked in corporate before.
Mm.
I spent the last 2.5 years working in hospitality and various other fields, just to make the bills, and also to get the flexibility I needed to pursue all things creative, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest frustration in my life is that I've not really made much progress, mate.
Mm. Yeah,
I'm still
yeah.
doing the stuff I did years ago, and I enjoy it more now. I think because I
Hmm.
don't obsess over numbers or whatever. And I think a big part of that is meeting my girlfriend. I think that
Hmm.
really helped me sort of gain a sense of perspective again.
Mm.
Because when she wasn't around, like, I really did obsess over numbers, and, like, as in, like, oh, why, how many views, how many
Yeah,
followers,
yeah.
when is this going to reach people, blah, blah, blah. And now it's
Hmm.
like, I see what that does to people, like, when they
Mm.
obsess over said things.
Hmm.
But I also look at, like, what it is I actually want,
Mm.
because I really had to sit and reevaluate that. And what it is that I want is to just do these things for a living.
Mm.
which is a very achievable goal. I know plenty of people who do this for a living and aren't like famous or rich, but they do this for a living and they love it and they have control over their life. And that's the key thing I've isolated is I don't have control over my life. I get pushed into like different jobs, like this new job. Everyone's congratulating me and be like, "Oh, that's great news," and I'm like, "Is it? It's a job, and I wanted a job, and now I've got one. I'm going to give it my all." But the reality is, it's not what I want to do for a living.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and I'm stepping back into corporate, and yeah, it gets me out of hospitality, which is a godsend, and I'll do my best to work around the time, and still do music and voice acting and podcasting, of course. I mean, that's something that's actually given me back is podcasting, because I had to. This was the thing that was suffering a bit, and I don't know if I told you this, but actually, I set a goal of doing this for at least 10 years.
Okay, cool.
And we're 5 years in.
Halfway there?
Yeah. And I guess I see it as like journalism or something. Sharing stories, sharing people's lives.
Yep.
You know, I've interviewed people all around the world in all different backgrounds and fields and different stories, all sorts. Learned a lot from it. I've had some really amazing conversations over the years, and that I think is enough for me to like keep it going. You know, even if, because I've never made a penny off this show. I've never, some videos have done well, some podcasts have done a bit better, but you know, I had a few cool guests over the years, but you know, it's like, I guess the point I'm trying to allude to with all of this, because it's easy to just kind of digress and just talk about nonsense, right? I don't want this to become a therapy session. Yeah. But
me or you?
Let's get a beer now. You want to see where it's going. We were talking about progress and projects before, and creativity. You know, you want to be okay. I'll rephrase that. Some of us want our creative projects to go somewhere. Some of us don't. It makes no difference either way. You know, your art is for you, your creativity is for you. It doesn't, you know, just because this person's going off and trying to make a career out of it and you're not, doesn't make your stuff any less than theirs, and vice versa. It's just different goals.
Totally.
You know, like I've had that over the years. I've met people and I'm like, "Oh, you should do this," and they're like, "No, I just do it for me." And I'm like, "Okay," and like I didn't get it then, but now I get it. Like, you know. But for me, it's just not good enough to just only get to do it once in a while. Because I miss it like one would miss a family member or a place that they hold sacred, or you know what I mean. Like, it's when I'm on stage or when I'm doing a show, I feel like this is who I am. This is what I'm about. And when I'm doing stuff that isn't this, it's kind of just sad.
I get that.
You know what I mean? What does creativity mean to you?
Oh, great question. See, the way I see it for me, I see there's so many different different hats I could put on to answer this. Because there's like my academic me is like, okay, creativity is a psychological process. It's like a state. It's da 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 da. Which officially, it
so
is.
Clinical. I hate it. Sorry.
This is it. Yeah.
But
So I'm going to give them more.
I suppose,
I'll give them a personal answer, which is, I think, for me, creativity is to me, and only to me, is to expression. Is expression. It's a voice. So the way I do creativity, I tend to have words involved, and music involved. So even with academic writing, it's not about, okay, I'm just going to churn out a paper because I need to up my publication numbers. That doesn't really interest me so much. It's about story. It's about, sort of maybe questioning narratives. So questioning sort of status quos, and then you move to like other writing, like non-academic writing. It's about expression. It's about leaving a piece of me in there for sure. I'm not one of those people who can write songs that are like total nonsense songs. Like each song's got to kind of have a deeper meaning to me. Like, you know, like people who say like, oh, if you're gonna get a tattoo, it's got to really mean something. That's how I see creativity. I'm like, if I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it, and it doesn't have any sort of value to me, then I'm just not gonna do it. So yeah, creative. Long story short, creativity to me is just expression. It's a voice.
Powerful words.
Mm.
What are you hoping that people take away from your book?
So the main thing for me in it is I hope that people have a look at their own creativity and ask, okay, am I a creative person? So all the way through this kind of process, obviously for the last now, 4 years now, since I started thinking about it. When I've spoke to people about creativity, say, oh, really cool, that's really cool. I say, well, you're creative, aren't you? Say, oh God, no, me? You're joking, right? No, not me. And I'm like, well, no, because you wrote that poem that you sent me that time, and you do the baking and you take it into work and people love it. Yeah, but that's not proper creativity. What do you mean by that? What the hell's proper creativity? Well, I just do it for fun. I'm just like I'm an amateur poet. And I'll go, and and it's funny because that translates really clearly into like the actual academic literature around creativity too, which is crazy to me.
Kind of reminds me of the famous story of Francis Ford Coppola, who directed the Godfather trilogy. Supposedly, I don't know if this is true, but he never studied film.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of your favorite directors never studied film. They just started doing it.
Yep.
It's true. Look it up. Some of the best of all time never studied. And apparently, after he was done with all of that, he then went to study and hone his craft. And one of the first books he read, supposedly it said, like on page 1 or first 10 pages, study The Godfather. Yeah, I mean, I always thought that was bullshit. Everyone's creative.
I agree.
Everyone is creative. If you really,
100%.
if you sit and look at your life and everything you do, even the little things like, I baked a cake, or I put on like some interesting outfits, or
100%.
yeah, I did some stuff at home. Like I arranged the stuff in a certain way. I mean, what you're forgetting is all of these things equate to something. Like, oh, that's fashion. Oh, that's interior design. Like, yeah, you might laugh at that and be like, no, it's not. I'm like, the only difference between you doing that and someone doing that for a living is organization and experience. That's it.
And training, but the actual process underneath it's pretty similar, right? It's okay, I think this would look really good over here. And then you try it out and you go, ooh, maybe a little bit more. And you engage in creativity there. You're looking at it and going, ooh, I'm just going to tweak it a bit. And then you're going through that process.
It's like someone asked me last night, what's my process for songwriting? And that question, I think a lot of the time you expect like this big grandiose response. And I was like, no, not really. It's just like I sit there with a guitar, I just jam. And if I like something, I might start writing some lyrics to it.
Yep.
And then if it becomes something, it becomes something. Other times it just sits there and does nothing. Like it's a lot of it is weird. Like everyone's got a different process, which I always find fascinating. Like for some people, it's like they have to be in a particular place or a particular mood, or it's a certain time of the day, or you know what I mean. Like, and for me, it's like a feeling. I don't know. Like you get in that, oh, I want to write a song kind of mode, you know, and you do it. And then it sounds so like pretentious, but like you feel it, you feel the song, you feel the moment. You're like, yeah, this is something. And funnily enough, a lot of the songs that I've written over the years, I had to have them like grow on me. I'll give you an example. There's a song on my album called "It Just Takes Time." And it's quite a like fun, upbeat song. I think you might have heard me play it live a few times. It's it's a fun little song. But when I first wrote that, I liked the riff for like all of a few weeks, and then I played it in a bunch of streams, and then I was like, eh. Yeah. And then when I was years later, I'm sitting down, I'm looking at all these songs I've written, and I'm trying to, excuse me, like put together an album, which when you've written a lot of music and you're trying,
Yes.
and it's your first album, it's the first album you've ever done. You've only ever done singles or EPs before. This is huge, and it's your way of saying like, "Hey, this is me," you know, or at least my first outing.
Yep.
It's a lot of pressure, and
Totally.
I was like looking at stuff, and I came across this song, and I was like, "Oh, I remember this." Yeah, and I'd been jamming it more recently, and it just, I tweaked it. That was it. That's what I was trying to get to. So you sometimes you'll start a process, you'll leave it, and you'll come back to it later, and it will make sense later on.
Yep.
I think bringing it back to what we were talking about, like there's this fear with people and creativity, like, oh, what if I fail? Oh, what if it doesn't hold up against what other people do? Oh, what about this? What about that? Like creativity, the best way to look at creativity, if you're someone who has never really explored that side of yourself, and it is a side of yourself, everyone has it, everyone in the world has creativity.
Yep.
It's just expressed in different ways. Once you start exploring that, it's like being a kid. When you're in the playground and you just, you know, you just made up scenarios like, I'm Batman, you're Robin. Or, you know, like, oh, what if we would do this? What if we pretend that we're doing... And you just did it. You didn't overthink it. You didn't go, oh, this would be cringe. This would be weird. Like, you're a kid. You just, let's have fun. Right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what creativity is, in my estimation. It's let's have fun.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And sometimes you get to harness that for work. You know, sometimes that works out pretty well. Sometimes I'm going to guess it doesn't always work out well. It's great. One of the people we interviewed is an actor, comedian. And yeah, what they were saying is that it's a real double-edged sword. When you're kind of doing what your passion is for work, in the sense of, you know, you get that expression, you sometimes make some money off it. Other times you're like, I've just got to do it. I've just got to get something out there. And so you kind of, what you're saying about numbers is what this person was saying too. Like, you know, over lockdown, I was posting like little skits online and stuff, and I'd really obsess over the numbers, the views coming in, the comments. Why have you not commented on that one, but you commented on that one? Hey, someone liked this one, but not that one. Is this one not as good? And it could kind of really turn into this sort of toxic mindset. And how they got out of that was just going, hang on, I'm going to do this for me and just for me. And if people want to watch it, sweet, cool.
Is this person like someone we would know if you said their name? Like we would know?
No, not in that way. No,
just like up and coming, or
yeah.
Doing pretty good numbers.
I'd say so for where they are, and
yeah.
Context. They've decided to go anonymous in the book.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Otherwise, I'd say, but
the reason I don't care about the identity. What I care about is more. It's kind of what I was saying before about obsession with numbers. I think it's creatively stifling. I think it actually it harms what you do. Like, and it also kind of like hurts your audience, you know, because in the past I've really been like sad about like not having the numbers and stuff, and then you know my audience would be like, well, we're here. We've been here for years.
What about us?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I feel like an arsehole now. And but that's the thing, like. It's not just that, it's also like play to your audience, play to the people that care. Like when we've done open mic nights together, right? I don't think me and you have ever looked at the room and gone, do you know what? There's just not enough people here. Like no one cares. It's like, look, maybe only 3 people care. So play to the 3 people that care.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Like
literally,
like I've literally been in rooms when there was no one. Right? I remember one of my, it might have been the last gig I ever played with my first proper band. The only person in the room was the sound engineer.
Okay.
And he was like, he fucking loved it, but he was like, sorry lads. And it was bittersweet. It was our last gig. I just found out that we were breaking up on that day, and I was you know, it was rough. Yeah, it was awful. But we gave it our all. You know, I just said to him, I was like, let's just fucking do this. Let's just play.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, and like you can see the videos online, like we really just gave it everything, like it was a full on, and it was, and that's the thing. I think, like I always joke, like you got to play like it's Wembley, you know. You just got to just do your thing, and not care about anything. Like I still fucking hell, lately for some reason every time I get on stage I feel a little bit nervous. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing it years and I don't have any qualms about, I don't care, but there's something there, I guess. I guess maybe it's just, occasional nerves. But once you get into the rhythm and you start doing it, you don't worry about it as much.
Yeah.
And I think bringing it back to what we were saying before, like people that don't express their creativity, I think they are worried about that scrutiny, well, I'm amateur, I don't want people to mock this, I don't want, this is, and I get it, like creativity is a very personal thing, it's an extension of yourself, so if like
totally
do you know what I mean, like when my album comes out and inevitably there will be people that don't like it and they will probably make themselves known, and it's like some of it will be constructive, some of it won't be, and that's that's their opinion and that's fine. It will still hurt me though, because it's from me. It's something I made.
It's personal, it's vulnerable.
That's the thing. You have to kind of just be like, look, I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing this for me. And as long as I keep it about that, this can't hurt me.
Yeah, I like that. Because the thing is, when you put yourself out there like that, so if creativity is an extension of us, then when you put it out there, that's super vulnerable. Like there are certain songs that I've just not played live because I'm like, not yet. I'm not there yet. It's too vulnerable.
Wow.
But I think every song I've got is vulnerable in a way.
Yeah.
In that I'm putting something from my head or from my soul, I guess, out into the world and like to other people's ears. And there's something in that is like, it takes some degree of courage and bravery to be able to do that, full stop. Like anyone that gets up on stage and does anything, I don't care if it's good, bad, great, amazing, garbage. It's still brave regardless.
What has music taught you about life?
Ooh. I think for me, music is life.
Wow.
There's a quote.
There you go.
I know. There's a quote that someone, she's called Michelle, one of our interviewees. Well, we call them storytellers in the book. And she said, music, it's just like food and water to me. Like, I need it. Without it, I wouldn't live. And I think I really resonated with that. So like, if I'm not talking with someone, I've probably got some kind of music on. I'm listening to music. And if I'm not listening to music, I'm probably picking up guitar. And it's vital to me.
You know what's funny? Music was my first dream. I when I was younger, I thought I was going to be a professional musician. A friend of mine last night said, like, because I was talking about trying to get him back on stage, because I want to hear his stuff, and he was like, but I'm not like you, I'm not a professional musician. I was like, neither am I. And it was like, no, you are, and then that was interesting from perspective, but also like I was trying to push him to have belief in himself, because he has something to offer. But I was also kind of thinking that, like, I've been pursuing acting and other stuff since 2019.
Yeah.
But I also started doing music again. And I'd given up on that. Because it hadn't worked out the first time, and I let people get in my ear and, get in my head. So I gave it up. And then every time I saw a guitar, every time I saw someone on stage, like, there's this meme I saw years ago. I mean, it was kind of like a bittersweet one, but it's like a guy all dressed in like American football gear, ready to get on the pitch, but he's like in the reserves, and he's just standing there like ready, like, when's it going to be my chance? That's how I felt every time I watched musicians on stage doing their thing, and I'm like, I kind of couldn't watch it. It was a bit like seeing an ex-girlfriend dating someone else. It just tears you apart. I was like, why am I not there? And a lot of the time I would just walk away, not think about it, just try and forget about it. And then eventually I started facing it. I was like, I need to do this again.
Mm.
And so I started just writing, throwing some music out there, just on YouTube, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed it.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, I miss this. And then when I came back to England, I started doing live streams and I started playing some of that, and people liked it. People really liked it. And they were like, hey, you should put music out. Why don't you start gigging? And I'd always be like, yeah, one day, yeah. And then I started really listening to those people and going like, yeah, why don't I? Why am I not doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And I dipped my toe in it a little bit, and to be honest, it felt a bit like it was the wrong environment. And I moved away from it, and I just kept playing online and just treating it like a little hobby.
Sure.
You know, even though it means everything to me, I just looked at it like that. I was like, wow, you know, maybe it's never going to happen. You know, it's a pipe dream, because I'd let the world allow me to believe that.
Yeah.
And then there was a particular night I was having a drink, and the open mic night was happening at GC.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty drunk. Nothing crazy, but
Yeah.
And I kept looking at the stage and seeing these people play, and then looking back at my drink, and something in me was just like, fuck it. And I went up to the organizer. Her name's Kaisha, as you know, lovely girl, Kaisha Croft.
Legend.
She's gonna be on the show soon.
Yes.
Yeah. I asked if they had like a guitar I could use, I think. And yeah, I was able to borrow like either hers or Adrian's or something.
Yeah.
And I got on stage and I played, and it was a very powerful moment. I don't know, like it just felt right. And I was like, I need to do this again. But I don't want it. I don't know if I could take heartbreak a second time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, if you deny yourself the thing that you love the most, then you're just torturing yourself.
Sure.
And so after that, I just kept doing it and showing up and making friends. Because obviously you make friends, you find like-minded people, you find the right environment. And I wouldn't say my confidence was ever shot as far as performance. I was always ready in that sense, but I guess I started believing like, hey, maybe I could do something again. Maybe I could start recording. Maybe I could actually do something.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started getting the gigs through Rob, who used to promote there. Because I remember that as well. I'll tell another story if you'll permit me.
Go for it.
I was at the bar with a guy called Archie, and we were just like drunk and just okay. So this will sound really stupid, but this is just my sense of humor. So I love Frank Sinatra. I really love swing. A few times I've shown up at Scholar after GC and just like started singing swing. And it went down well. I love one day. If music ever works out for me, don't be surprised if one day I do a swing album, and I am serious. I would really do it. Like
I know
album,
you well enough.
I would do that. I love Frank Sinatra. I love swing. So anyway, we're at the bar, and turns out Archie's a good singer as well. So we're just singing in that swing way, but we're taking like death metal lyrics, like Cannibal Corpse and stuff, and like I'm a smashed face, born in a burial gown, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Rob, who happened to be there, and he was just like, I'd pay you to get on stage to do that. I was just like, what? Well, I was just taking a piss, mate. And he was like, you got a guitar? Can you play? And I was like, yes. I guess he'd already seen me play or something. But basically what he said was, I will pay you money. I'll give you a gig. If you do like an hour and you can play acoustically and sing, you can go do it. And I was like, and I could tell he was being serious.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not ready. Like, I need to, like, get my stuff, because I knew I needed to, like, learn songs, get stuff together, get prepared, right? And I just kind of, like, shrugged it off. And then I saw him a few times after that. And then one day I was just like, I just saw him again. I was like, that gig, is it still on the table? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, let's do it.
Nice.
And it all just kind of went from there.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean about pursuing your creativity, whether you've never done it or, you know, maybe you've been burned and you're getting back into it and you're dipping your feet back in. It'll be the best thing you ever do, because you can't deny what you are.
That's a really nice way of looking at it.
It's just
Because I've kind of, kind of these like fallow years, you know, when you think, forget the music, I'm never going to make it, so I'm just going to leave it.
Well, imagine this. Imagine
it hurts, right? Like,
imagine tomorrow you were like, I'm just going to pack this in. I'm never going to play on stage again. Now imagine what that looks like.
I don't know.
It just doesn't feel right. You know what I mean?
No,
like it's. I played the other night, the open mic that we played together, and my friend came up to me, and he said, "I've never heard you play before. I've seen videos and stuff, but I've never heard you play before. That was fucking brilliant." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, man. Like, I appreciate that. Like, you know, because he was out for doing something else, but he just happened to be there, and he was like, wow, that was really, really good." He was surprised, and he said that. He said like, "Oh, no offense, but like I was surprised." I was like, "Oh, thank you." And it's one of those things where even your friends, like some of your friends might believe in you, but a lot of people won't see anything in you, and that doesn't mean that you don't have anything in you. It's just that there's this weird perception thing, which I think is a factor in why a lot of people choose to not do things creatively, because they're too concerned with other people's perception of them.
100%.
You know, when I walk into a bar or when I do a live stream or walk down the street, I'm not concerned with what other people think about me. I know what they probably think because I can see it written on their face.
Okay.
Or I can get a gist. I can, you know what I mean? Like I can feel. I'll give you a really good example, right? Josh, if you're watching, if you're listening, you remember this story. So we're sitting in the bar one day. Sorry, bar stories, but it really it's amazing how many of these stories are like great stories about life. So we're sitting there, and Josh is opposite me. There's a few other people, you know, like people you sort of know of. You don't know them, but you know of them.
Yeah,
right? So we're all just sitting and talking. I've just done. I think I hosted that night. I hosted the open mic night. It was huge.
Cool. Yeah.
And it was the opening one. I was like, oh, thanks. You know, shout out to Kaisha. Thanks again. It was cool. It was good. We had some good artists. I did all sorts. It was a really, really good, and I got to play it as well.
Awesome.
So we're resting, we're chilling, we're chatting. There's this girl there, and the only word, I mean, Josh would say dickhead. I would say insufferable.
Yeah.
Now, she was going around in a semicircle, like just picking at people. I don't know how else to put, just being a dick, like right. just being awful. And she's the type of person. She's a regular that goes there, but she's not always there. But she's like, she shows off. She does like a lot of traveling, and she apparently just goes on about that and is very judgmental, looks down on you, stuff like that. Like just a real piece of work. And I just laugh at that. Like I remember, I'll give you an example just quickly before I finish the story. Like I remember I looked at her story one time. I was like, oh, is it this girl? And then I clicked off because I remember seeing like what her page was about, and it was just like she was in person. I was like, wow, this person like really just is in love with themselves.
Yeah.
And I've always been about authenticity, about no, don't show off, be a real person.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Just be real.
Yeah.
So anyway, she followed me. I never followed her back, and then within the space of a week, she then unfollowed me.
Okay, right.
I love that petty behavior. Like, oh, what? He wouldn't follow me, but I'm important. I'm this person. Like, I knew that it was that. But anyway, going back to the semicircle story. So she's picking at people, and I know inevitably it's going to get to me, and I'm just not in a fucking mood. I'm just like. Ugh. And she eventually gets to me, and she was like, so what's your story? Why are you here tonight? Kind of thing. And I was like, well, I hosted the open mic here tonight, and I played. And she was like, I don't believe you. And I'm like,
right, so
I can show you videos if you want. I don't really give a shit. And she's trying to push me about it, and I think that's when Josh piped up and was like, I was there, dickhead. Like, I saw it. Like we all saw it. But it was... And she then just got distracted, started talking to someone else. And... Well, actually, no. I think it was somewhere in that exchange. I don't know where, but I looked Josh directly in the eyes. And he didn't even... He just mouthed, I know. Like, I didn't say anything. He was like, I know.
You didn't need to.
Just why did I tell this story? I can't remember the point.
I've lost it. But
I've lost the point. I mean,
about how other people see.
Right. Okay. So
what you're doing, right?
Obviously, this person looked at me, and yeah, they're that judgmental type. They're that person that judges you and always judges you. But again, there are people that judge, and there are people that don't. If you walk around judging everyone, then, I mean, A, you're not pleasant to be around. B, right, if it's online, who gives a shit, man? Do you know, I've had everything from people saying, you're amazing, I love you, to you should give up now, you're hopeless. You know, like, you can't sing. Like, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to do my thing. And if you like it, you like it. And if you don't, you don't. Like, I see it a lot like a painting. Like, the painting's there, it's a painting, right? Yep. Whether you love it or hate it, it's a painting, and it's going to be there.
Yep.
And that's how I see everything that we do creatively. It's just there. It is absolutely open to interpretation and open to criticism. Like, I've always said this as well. More than happy to receive criticism.
I find it helpful.
Yeah. I've like, if someone thinks that shit, like, do bear in mind, I'm not going to be like, oh, thank you very much. I'm not going to, you know what I mean? I choose to ignore it, but I don't like, and I'm not going to interact with it, but I'm also not going to sit there and delete your comment. Like, I'm going to leave it there because that's your opinion.
Yeah.
Now, if it's abuse, if
that's
it's like,
story.
You targeting me and being just a bully, then I'm going to block you and delete you. But yeah. It's the same way that, like, when I've been on stage before, I've had, like, I've sometimes disagreed with Kaisha about certain things. She'll tell people to quiet down, you know, don't shout, and I'll be like, well, to an extent, I mean, it's part of being a performer. You know, it's an opinion. Now, if that person's like shouting at you to unalive yourself or whatever, then that's too far. But if they're just going, oh, you're shit, it's like, fuck you. Like, just who cares, man? Like, I mean, everyone else is into it. So what? If you don't like it, there's the door, mate. Like, that's it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't matter. What, they can't stop you from doing it unless they literally physically come up to you and like try to break your legs or something. Like, then I guess fair enough, they're actually trying to stop you. But otherwise, it's just words. Now, bringing it back to the original point. If you've never gotten into creativity before, and you're scared, and you're trepidatious, and you're worried about what people think, look, the only person that can stop you is you.
True.
That's it.
True.
Anything you want to throw on that?
think, yeah, and a lot of the times when it's funny, you've kind of given a really concrete example of someone actually maybe kind of throwing you off, right, by shouting at you when you're on stage and stuff. But the majority of the time, if you're sat there thinking, I'd really like to try out some music, but I don't think people would be into it,
Right.
no one's actually said, I'm not into it. A lot of the time when other people are getting in our way, it's actually our mental image of other people, right? It's like our assumptions about what other people will think. So unless you actually get on stage and like the kind of whole room turns and goes, oh yeah, I'm sorry, that's not very good. A lot of the times when we stop ourselves is because we assume. So like when I kind of went off doing music for a while, like I was in a band in high school, like every, and it was great fun, loved it. It fell apart as all high school bands inevitably do. Um, and after that, a lot of the people that were left kind of in my close circle were kind of saying like, yeah, you're never going to be a rock star, mate. Just, and that really got to me. And then, so if I sat down with the guitar, I think, okay, well, I'm doing this bit for me. But then if I thought ahead, I'd be like, well, I can't play it live because, as everyone said, it's not very good. But I'd start like thinking, well, yeah, I was like imagining this like big room full of people and me trying to play one of my songs and it not going perfect and everyone kind of going, not enjoying it. And that really stopped me for ages and it stopped me even writing. So it didn't just stop me performing. So I only did my first open like 18 months ago. I'd never performed any of my songs before that.
Those
So
people that said, you're never going to be a rock star, mate.
yeah.
Don't do it. Were they actually doing anything? Anything at all?
Yeah, and I think
They were. That's interesting.
yeah, how much should I go into this? But yeah, like um this was like an ex, so it was like quite a I think that gave it weight, the kind of message. So you're like 18,
Okay.
you're in a relationship and you're like, okay, yeah. And I kind of took that seriously and took it to heart.
I mean, a partner's supposed
Um
to be supportive, though.
you'd hope so, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
As I said, it's an ex. For reasons
It's for
similar
a
to this.
reason.
Yeah. But like she was doing creative stuff and in a way I almost wonder if it's like, well, I'm the creative one. And I hate that. Because if you're in a relationship, I thrive off creativity.
I can relate to that. I once dated a girl who was extremely smart, but almost always felt the need to undermine me and make me feel stupid.
Because she's got to be the smartest.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
of insecurity, because like her father was always on her case, but it was
Mm.
stupid. Like she had struggles, but she was a very intelligent person. I would be
Yeah.
supportive and reinforce that, but she always made me feel crap about myself. And it's like
Yeah, yeah, it's no good.
what you said, the whole no, I'm the smart one. No, I'm the
Yep.
creative one.
Yep. Yeah, like this person was doing like acting.
Okay.
Not at like a sort of local level, like Amdram level, which there's nothing wrong with.
No.
Because I helped out with some like productions. Amdram's amazing.
Mm.
Like Amdram is so fun. Like it's and the actual stuff they put on, sometimes I've sat in a production and thought, oh my God, that's better than a professional production. I've
Wow.
literally seen shows done at Amdram, then gone and seen it like a professional version and thought the Amdram one was actually better. And this is what we're saying, like kind of budget and esteem don't actually mean that much relative to actual just creative kind of force and talent and things coming together. So this isn't me putting down Amdram because I think if you've ever thought I might like to do a bit of acting, go to your local amateur dramatics group and just go speak to them because there might well be a place for you. But she was doing that kind of stuff, and it's like, okay, so I'm not going to be a rock star, but you're not going to be in Hollywood. So like, where's the kind of why can't I have my thing too?
But this is the thing as well. Like you've really hit on a really important point that the presentation
Hmm.
is so. How can I put this? Such a big part of how people perceive you.
Yeah,
Like, for example, if everything that I did had like the best quality camera, like right now I'm using a shitty webcam, right? Because that's all I can afford. I got
Yeah.
a good mic, but I got a shitty webcam, right?
Mhm.
I'm doing a Zoom podcast as opposed to a physical podcast. So
Yep.
clearly there's not a big budget, if at all, for this show. Does that make it any less good? No. I mean, look, it's been 5 years, 290 something episodes. I don't know. I've lost count. And that's not me showing off. I'm just saying that, like, Judge me by my body of work and my quality of content.
Totally.
Don't judge me by the fact that the camera's not good, or because only like 50 people have listened to this show.
Yeah.
So, I've seen big shows, with huge followings that are shit. Like, I've always looked at my show as being a show. That's why I call it a show. It's the Christian Reeve Podcast, right? But it's a show. I segment it that way. I try to move it in that way. I try to move it like a story, like with a narrative, like we're going from this to this to this. For the last better part of 45 minutes, we've been talking about creativity as an offshoot of mental health, but we've explored that. We're going to move on to something in a minute. Ooh. And in my head, I've got that planned, but I've let it breathe because that's part of what I've learned in podcasting, what you do, right? I've seen people obsess over the wrong things. It's not about all the equipment you have. One day you'll afford that. I know one day I'll have everything I want, like equipment wise, because at the end of the day, it's just money, right? But you can't buy quality as far as like content is concerned.
No.
That comes from experience. That comes from working hard. That comes from sheer willingness, you know? Like, why does that song sound good? Because I've performed it 50 times and tweaked it and worked on it, and
because it's everything. It's me. It's
right.
This is my thing. It's
exactly.
I mean, you get these people, don't you, at open mics who have like ridiculous guitars. You'll see. I think to me, it's a rule. If you come to an open mic and I see you've got like a Gibson, I'm like, this is gonna suck. Because I think some people just like you say, obsess over the gear.
I was trying to figure out what you mean, but I know what you mean now. It's like the overcompensating thing, like that person that shows up with ridiculously overpriced guitar, and then they play and it
invariably
sounds like
they get up and it's garbage, or someone gets something like some crappy like Squire with Hello Kitty on it and is shredding like a motherfucker with like
right.
That's like this little thing I've noticed. It's why did I hear it? Someone said it's like instead of a try hard, they're a buy hard. Like they think I'm going to do this hobby and then buy the most expensive gear straight off.
I mean, I think to an extent, I would say, because there's people that have done the open mics where I've been like, you know what, they're professional. They've shown up at this open mic. They're just doing their thing, and they're really humble. And I've seen other people bring in like massive fucking rig. They take about 15 minutes to set it up. We only get 15 minutes on stage, by the way. So,
so that's someone's slot gone.
Well, I'll give you an example. Right, there was a guy. I won't say who, but if you're listening, you know who you are. I said this to Kaishi the other day. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." So I'm on stage, still performing. And this guy's in the background setting his shit up on stage while I'm still playing. And I turned and looked at him as I'm playing and then turned back. And I continued playing. I'm like, really, motherfucker? Yeah. Like, you, this is my moment. Yeah. Like, all right, yeah, fair enough. It's just an open white note. Who cares, right? But you know what? For those 15 minutes, I fucking do care. Get the fuck off the stage. So, like, have some respect. And then when I spoke to her about it, she was like, she brought up like etiquette and stuff, and I was like, but like that's just plain human decency, man.
Yeah.
And then he's gonna get on the stage and do his thing, and like it's all right, it's cool, but it's just like I don't know what the word for that is. It's like I always look at it like this, like don't be a dick. Just
it's a motto, right? Yeah, don't be a dick.
Whether it's Wembley or your local open mic, just be a human being.
Yeah.
Just play, have a good time, and treat the people around you with respect. That's it. Yeah. Stop. Like the amount of people as well that I've come across where, like, a lot of people at those open mics, for example, are willing to talk to you, right?
Yes.
But every now and again there'll be someone that's a bit, I'm too important to talk to you.
It's always strange on that. Yeah,
it's like
they come with like an entourage, and then they kind of come off stage and like they just go to the friends and shake hands, and then they all leave together straight away, and you're like, I don't know, what do you get from this? Like, are you just trying to get content to post, or like, because I go to an open mic for the community. I don't know about you.
I got to say, that comes under etiquette as well. I know how this will sound, okay? People are going to disagree with me, but if you're a musician, watching, listening to this now, you know exactly what I mean. If you're the first band on, which granted is not a great slot to be in, but if you're first on, second on, whatever, and you get on stage, you do your slot, you do your show, and then you leave, you are a cunt. Sorry to say
In
it.
no uncertain
Pardon the
terms.
language, but that's what you are. Yeah, and everyone thinks that. No one will say it to your face, but everyone thinks
Well,
it.
they don't have a chance because you've gone before you can speak.
Well,
to
yeah, but no one will have respect for you. And so
No.
much of gigging is about community because it's all about who you know.
Yeah.
Like I've gotten gigs and opportunities through friends because, like, Kaiju is a really good example, right? I just kept showing up.
Yep.
I showed up to the ones we were doing at a different venue where there was no one there, and you just get chatting. And I wasn't expecting anything. I just came to play and hang out, and that's what we did. And you inevitably, form friendships, and then before you know it, it's like, hey, Christian, do you want to host?
Awesome.
Do you want to cover me for this?
Yep.
Hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think about this? And I'm like, yeah. And if you show a genuine interest, like you're not trying to get something, you are, as you said, trying to be part of a community.
Yep.
People want to help you out. Like my friend Scoot always says this, that like, if you're a good person and you're, people like you, like they'll go out of their way for you. Imagine that, right? But like, it's true. Like, my friend Josh, all the time, he's saying to people like, hey, check out Christian, or hey, you should, I never ask him to do that. I think once I asked him if he could come to an open mic, and it was only because it was me hosting. Yeah. And it was a first time.
Yeah, you wanted the
and he came along and he brought some people, and that's a story for another day. But but yeah, thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, people, excuse me, they will look out for you if you look out for them, and if you are humble and genuine. Like if I walked around, that person that brought up that went on stage and started setting up their gear when I was playing, Josh has met that person as well, and I remember we were at the bar together one time, and I'd just gotten to know this guy, so I thought he was like pretty cool, nice guy. And Josh is just like looking at me like this. For those listening, imagine unamused face. It was, and he went into, like, I asked him why he felt the way he did, and at first he was hesitant, but then he just said like, well, this is what I think, and I won't say the words, but basically just like he knew this guy, he sensed insincerity, and that was the crux of it. I think one of the reasons that me and Josh are friends is because there's honesty there, there's authenticity there. There's I say what I think, and I'm not afraid if people don't like that or if people get offended or whatever. It's like I will say what I think, and you need that. Because there's too much fakeness, there's too much bitching behind each other's backs, and quite frankly, it's childish and lowbrow behaviour.
I think it comes into the songs too, right? So I was down at a different open mic recently, and
excuse me,
there are a lot of students from there's a music uni.
Oh right, yeah.
And there's a lot of students from that, and again, they kind of had some of that etiquette issue that we've just been talking about to start with.
Interesting.
But the music, it was well performed.
Okay.
I could see that it had been, I'm going to use the word crafted pretty well. I didn't feel much. And this isn't me saying I'm incredible and everyone else is garbage, right? Like, I love listening to other people's tunes. Like, I love listening to your tunes. There's quite a good few people on the sort of open mic circuit who when I see them, and I'm like, are you playing tonight? I go, yeah. I'm like, yes. Because I love the songs.
I know what you mean.
And some of these guys, I'm like, I could see how it was overall a good song, but I was like, but I don't get much from it. In that way that kind of radio pop a lot of the time is I can see that this is well produced. It's a lot of theory's gone into making this a catchy ass song. So I always think of what's that Jess Glynne song, Hold My Hand? The one that's on all the Jet2 adverts. It's really annoying. It's like do 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 do, but it's a catchy tune. It sticks in your head. But I can't imagine anyone sitting down, putting on some headphones, going, "I'm going to play my favorite ever song." Oh yeah, oh man, that's the stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's And that's what I was getting from this. And I think for me, authenticity, you can feel it in a song, which is really hard to then, you know, put into sort of certain scientific terms or whatever. But I think there's something ineffable about music where if someone's genuine, you feel it. So
Yeah,
like,
and it's like not someone trying to sell you something.
totally. So like when, you know, you like listen to a band's first album or an artist's first album and you hear that, and then you listen to like 10th, 11th, 12th album, and you're like, yeah, it's not got the same sort of, there's something missing from it. And I think it's that genuineness, because if you're mega rich and famous, you've suddenly not got any sort of stuff to draw on creatively that, you know, you just kind of, oh, best make an album. So like Chappell Roan, I've been listening to a lot lately, because her stuff, you can tell that she's just writing it because she's a songwriter. Whereas some other sort of big pop artists you listen to and you're like, yeah, I can see that this has like been designed by a committee pretty much. Like 10 songwriters, professional songwriters who've studied songwriting, who've sat around and done it. And
I mean, and you're not even exaggerating. I've seen this on major
no.
pop tunes.
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you look at your favorite artists, often there will be like 10 writers, and I'm like, how is it possible that there's 10 writers? Like, come on, this is ridiculous.
How do you fit 10 people in a song? That's wild to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can get like performance rights and stuff, and like,
But in terms of songwriting, that's crazy.
yeah.
Like you're doing a word each. What's the?
Well, I mean, I think obviously it's more than just lyrics, but it's just a bit excessive. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit too.
Well, that suddenly how you can't have 10 people's authentic sort of soul in that song.
Yeah, well, it's like
There's not
it's like
room
the old
for it.
saying: too many cooks spoil the broth. You know,
Yeah.
like
Totally.
I'm not saying that you can't have multiple writers, but like,
It's going to dilute how.
well, yeah, I mean, it's a vision, isn't it? Like, for
Yeah,
example,
yeah.
like let's say you remember that song that you performed at the open mic, and I said like, oh, I want to do like backing on it. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I don't want to come in there and change your song. I just, when I listen to it, I'm like, oh, I can hear some like higher accompanying vocals to that would sound cool. Now, here's the thing. If we do that, I'll pitch it to you. I'll be like, right, here's how it sounds with this.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Exactly.
And if you're like, yeah, I love it, then great. But if you're like, actually, I see it this way. Well, it's your song.
Totally.
So there it is. I remember when I was doing my album, I always felt a bit trepidatious about bringing up criticisms when it came to mixing and mastering. And Jack said to me, well, it's your vision, you know, and we're trying to match it to you. I think George said that as well, like match it to your vision and what you see it as. And it kind of dawned on me like, yeah, like this is a collaboration, but at the same time, like I have a particular thing in mind of what I want it to be, and if it's too far from that, it's not mine anymore.
Totally.
So yeah, interesting. That.
Which is, I like writing sort of doing that live collaboration as the songs coming into existence. That's when it's really fun. So I've only done this a couple of times, but like you said, I love how different people write so differently. My favorite example of this, I was kind of in this zone. I'm like, right, I want to see how other people write. I was like in a real sort of creative period for myself, like writing like a song every couple of days. I was like, yeah, this is great. So I play bass in a band. So I said to the singer in that band, I was like, hey, how do you write a song? He's like, well, what I do is I get all the chords. So I work out the verse, how that's going to sound, how the chorus is going to sound, maybe mid-late, and then I start writing lyrics. I was like, okay. So then I went to one of my other friends, my good mate Ben, who's a musician. I said, Ben, how do you write songs? He goes, well, I tend to write all the lyrics or like a poem, and then I try and put music to it. I'm like, whereas I'm somewhere in the middle. It kind of happens at the same time for me. Otherwise it doesn't. But that's why I love getting different people in a room and trying to come up with something. So like even like non-musician friends. So I've written stuff where I'm like, hey, like I'm doing loads of songwriting. If you've got any ideas, it's like for like a line, for a lyric, for an idea. So one song, I said earlier I don't do gimmick songs. This one's a bit gimmicky. It was like tragic, isn't it?
I'm kidding.
Well, it's fun. It sounds like it was like this idea of being in like a courtroom and like someone in the jury falling in love with the defendant. And so it's litigating for your love. I'm just like,
Oh,
that's such a fun title, right? And I'm hearing it as like this Arctic Monkeys-esque, like quite snotty kind of like, meh.
cool.
and uh, and that came from me and someone just having a really fun conversation about it and like coming up with stupid lyrics for it, and a lot of those made it into the song, and it's just really good fun. So it pushed me in a direction I wouldn't go in. So I really love doing that kind of live collaboration, and I like friends who like I've got a mate who used to play bass ages ago, and he came to mine and he just sat down. I'm like, come up with a bass line. He's like, but I've not played in like 10 years. I'm like, exactly though, because you're gonna come up with something that's different. And he came up with like this great, really nice, chill, simple bass line, and I threw look. It just works really well, I think. And this is what kind of linking back to the early point about just do it. Like you can be super creative without realizing you don't need to be trained. But having training in certain disciplines helps, right?
Mm,
But it's not the be all and end all. I've seen people go to like grade 8 in music, but they struggle to write. They're really great at
hmm.
performing songs, but they can't write for shit, which is fine. Their talents are elsewhere, but it's not everything, I guess. Um, yeah, I think just that process is. I love the different sort of routes people take, and the different routes I take. I don't know about you, but I've got about at least 10 different ways a song might appear in my head.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's an idea, sometimes it's a specific line, sometimes
Yes.
that line comes with a melody, and I've then tried to got to retrofit the guitar. I'm like, oh god, that's the worst one. I'm like, or sometimes I'm just playing chords and I'm like, ooh, and sometimes just warbling over the top of some chords. I'm like, oh, that sounds fun.
I do that.
Um,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what's the
Just
word?
nonsense
What's the
lyrics. Yeah,
word? Come on.
yeah,
Absolutely. I want to ask you like
mm,
a few more questions about music, and then
yeah.
we'll get back to mental health.
Cool.
I've asked a few of our mutual friends about this,
Hmm.
so I want to get your thoughts. What are your thoughts
Please.
on open mics in general, and also by extension this new booking style of open mic night? Which, to give you context, I said this to my friend Kaisha. She agrees with me. It's not an open mic night if every slot is booked.
It's not open.
The one that GC is partially. There's always some free slots
Hmm.
still available. So
Yeah.
that, by definition, is still an open mic night. If everything is booked, then it's like a free gig, I guess. A showcase. She got it showcase. I think that's a good.
Showcase is the word that came to my head.
That's
Yeah,
a good
yeah.
way of putting it. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we've touched on this before, me and you in person, haven't we?
Mm,
And I, I think I like to try and be reasonable and think, okay, but if someone's got like 20 people rock up on a night and he's only got 10 slots and you've got to turn 10 people away, I think it kind of creates this thing where you've got to almost like the time you've got to arrive jumps back and back and back, and other people might be like, hey, I'd love to come to the open mic. I can only get there like an hour after it starts, is there any slots? And I think as someone who works full time, I would struggle sometimes. I think what it is to me is I think it shows that there's room for more open mics in Manchester.
sure.
Like, I'm not sure how this works on a national level. I'd love to know more about other cities, but to me, Manchester, for such people see it as this mega musical city, and there might be like 2 open mics a night, but it's Manchester. Like, just to take in like the music students who want to perform, that'd take like you could probably do like 2 a night just for those guys. Um,
I feel like with this whole link thing and booking ahead, there's a sense of
yeah,
elitism. I mean, for example, you could
yeah, yeah.
choose not to book people on the basis that you don't like them and they're
That's
not good
true.
enough. Whereas an open mic, you
That's
show
true.
up, you get an opportunity, and like, I suppose, yeah, the host could in future not let you on the stage again,
Yeah,
but at least you
yeah.
got that opportunity. For some people,
I
it
agree.
might be there, but that's the thing. Okay, scenario: you've never
Mhm,
performed live before.
mhm.
You want to. You want to hone your craft. The only way
Yep.
you're going to be able to do that is an open mic, because you're not going to get a gig until you're
Nope.
at a certain level.
Yep.
So this is a starting point. So how are you supposed to do that if everything is pre-booked?
And this is it. I think I don't agree with it being fully booking only. I think if it moved to that point where you had to book like, I mean, I've seen somewhere you've got to book like a week in advance
Yeah.
essentially. Like I've messaged hosts before, like 4 days before an open mic, and it's been, sorry, we're fully booked. I'm like, what? Like you say, it's no longer an open mic. It's a showcase. I think it's about a balance. I think I understand the need from like a logistics point of view, a boring logistics point of view. But I'm totally with you. I'm thinking of them, thinking of the first one I did, and thinking, yeah, I think if I'd had to kind of book in, it'd be quite intimidating because you're like, there's this expectation then too of like, well, I've been booked. I'm like, I'm in. I've got a slot. Like I've got to turn up and perform now.
Do you know? I mean, look, I'll call it out. And this was before Michael ran it, so maybe it's different now. But I did the open mic night at Peaky Blinders one time. And I fucking hated it. It was just like, I mean, it was kind of cool. Like you walk in, you know, it's very formal. Like you ask about your reservation, whatever. You get given a drinks token, so you get a free drink. Cool. And you sit down and you wait to perform. And everyone there is just a musician waiting to play. Some musicians stick around. Most just like fucked off before the end of this. Yeah, that's what they all do. Some people took the piss. There was one guy who played for like 25 minutes. Nothing was said about that. It pushed everything back.
Right.
We waited for I was incensed. I had to wait like an hour and a half, and they gave me like another free drinks token. And I was like, okay, thanks. They asked me up one time back since then. I was like, nah, you're right. I was just like, I hated the setup of it. No one gives a fuck. It's very like,
I've got to say that
it's like, okay, get on stage, you're done. Okay, next person. Okay, next person. Okay, next person. Like, the fuck is that? That's just like a queuing system for music performance. Like it's like, where's the soul in that? Like the whole beauty of an open mic is you never know who's going to show up. You never know what's going to happen. It's open. Anyone can rock up with a guitar or whatever and perform. You know? My issue is semantics. Call it what it is. It's a showcase. It's not an open mic night.
Yeah. I think an open mic lives and dies with the host. 100%. It's all down to that open mic host. I think if you curate that atmosphere and you kind of make sure performers when they turn up feel welcome, feel ready to go.
That one it
makes a huge difference.
It was too formulaic. Do you know what I'm saying?
And also, but and you've got to set the boundaries too. Like you said, like if someone gets up and they do like 6 songs, and you're like, hold on, I only get 3. What's going on here? It's like there's this kind of unevenness. I think you've got to have it like, if it's an open mic, you either get 15 minutes or 3 songs and then you're off. And it's the next person's turn. And the venue sometimes helps. Did you ever do Lion's Den?
Never done it.
I don't even know if they still do it now, because it was the guy running it was great. Tyler is called. And that's where I did my first ones. But something about the room. So I've noticed when an open mic's got like a very separate room for the open mic from the bar, it tends to be that only the performers and their friends are up there. So suddenly the atmosphere is different anyway. And like you said, it's kind of like a lot of musicians come in because they want to play, they sit there, they might sit through until they're on, they come on, and then they're straight off. So if I was on like last, second to last, third from last even, suddenly the room's empty.
Yeah.
Whereas GC, because it's got that nice mixed feel, it really works.
This is what I mean as well. You got a like Blockbuster and queues like that. I performed there, lovely, but it's not like no one else is hanging there.
Yeah,
like no, because
very rarely
you don't know that it's even there. It's not advertised very well, to be honest, and it's exactly what you mentioned. Like everyone just leaves.
and that stresses me out. You know, don't get me wrong. I've got to leave early sometimes for reasons, and sometimes turn up late, and that's life. But I always make an effort to watch other people.
Well, I think as well with the atmosphere, environment thing, what you're talking about is somewhere like GC is like somewhere you'd want to hang out and stick around. Yeah. These other places where it's separate from the bar, separate area, why would you want to stay there? Like, it's, it's just musicians and performers. Everyone's like isolated, not really talking. It's just an uncomfortable environment to be in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know what you mean. Because it's a great question. Yeah, I think it's a particularly Manchester issue too, because to me, Manchester gets billed as a big music city. And I get that because so much music's come from Manchester. I'm from Bolton, so I'm from a town Bolton, just outside Manchester. But to me, Liverpool's by far the more musical city when you're walking around it.
Oh.
I think Manchester's produced more, but when you're actually walking around on the streets,
fighting words, buddy.
But it's true, Liverpool breathes music.
So does Manchester. I think that's.
I don't think in the same way though. I think there's gigs on in Manchester. There's tons and tons of gigs, like proper pro gigs. But Liverpool, every single bar's got great live music coming out of it. Manchester, I don't get that same feeling.
Well, you're saying it's more gentrified, maybe.
Possibly.
I'd agree with that.
Could be the reason.
Like there are, but then that's just an issue of in general that the UK is facing with gentrification.
Well, true.
I would argue, yeah, Liverpool has retained more of that. There's more venues like that.
There's something in the air in Liverpool.
Yeah, they're on.
There's something.
They're on something a bit different there.
Different gravy.
Okay, one final question about music. What's
go.
the craziest thing you've ever seen at an open mic night?
What a question. Let me think. Yeah, quite recently, this week. I don't know how to describe what the guy was doing. It was a mixture of like chanting and throat singing. At one point, he started like laughing as part of the performance. At one point, he kind of put the mic down and just stood in the middle of the room and just started doing it.
Oh my God.
And it was amazing, but it was like quite, I guess, confronting because we're in this like, yes, someone's going to get up with an acoustic guitar, they're going to play their songs, and then they're going to get off. And then this guy just throws that out the window. And I love him for that because it really made you... It was quite, it was emotive, super emotive. He was singing in different languages too. And it made it really powerful. It was an awesome performance, but it was so different. And like kind of all the music students who'd come down to play their songs are just sitting around like, what the hell is this? And I'm like, this is fucking great. This is like so real.
It can be hit and miss with that though. Like, I remember I used to go for mics at this speakeasy in Estonia, in Tallinn. It's above a shop. And it was basically like a spoken word. They didn't really do music.
Cool.
So I ended up doing like poetry, and every now and again I used to just hang out and just talk and stuff. But I remember one time, and this is, I'm sorry, but I hate like spoken word poetry. I just do.
No.
Like I like elements of it here and there, it depends, but like a lot of it I really just hate. There was one time where this woman, I don't even know how to describe it, like interpretive dance, like she's like, words are like this, but yeah, it's like this, and you feel the power, and it was just really uncomfortable. I was just like, like, I wonder if I could sneak out and like, if anyone will notice. It was, I don't know. I mean, I do cringe at some of those, to be honest, or like, because I want to pay attention to the words. And often you can, and you're like, oh, cool, this is powerful, this is meaningful, you know. Like, for example, that poet we saw the other day, and
awesome.
Yeah, it was really good, but man, was I uncomfortable. But then I remember thinking, like, well, that's the point, though, isn't it? You're supposed to make you feel uncomfortable.
Sometimes that's what art does, right? It's about that discomfort and being able to sit with it.
Yeah, exactly. And it elicited the right response, and you know, she was very good with how she performed it, and there was a lot of emotion. Obviously, she was talking about real things, so it's
incredible.
Yeah. So there is a real spectrum to it. There's like really powerful,
there really is,
really awful cringe. So don't know how I'm going to segue back into mental health from here, but I'm going to try. based on everything you know and you've studied and just, I guess, the current state of affairs, how do we tackle the stigma of mental health?
I think we keep talking about it, because I'm not going to be, I think it'd be disingenuous to say we need to start talking about it. I think a lot of people, more so these days, are talking about mental health. So when I come across kind of people like 16 up to about 22, 23, so I'm like 26, and there is a real difference that I can tell in the way that they speak about it, or like the confidence with which they speak about it. There's obviously people kind of in my, let's call it like a sub generation, right? Like a, because I'm somewhere between millennial and Gen Z. Like it's a weird space to exist in. The Gen Zs are really open about it, from what I can see, from my experience of speaking to them. Way, way, way more so than the people that lean towards the millennial side of it. So I think people, and the stuff like Andy's Man Club, that was really great. So like counselling services have seen more and more men than ever accessing counselling and therapy because they feel able to. And so things are changing, but I think it's more understanding of what mental health problems really are, is, I think, the key to destigmatizing, because people see it as this like, okay, I've got depression. That's really negative language already. That's saying I have depression, I am depressed. It's like this, it brings the emotions and thoughts and the feelings into the self. And that's way harder to disentangle than I'm going through a hard time right now. I'm not feeling my best. I need some support to get me through it. A lot of it's quite semantic. So stuff like mental illness. I don't like using that word. So in the book, we've specifically avoided, and we've addressed it as we're not going to use the words mental illness, because the things people experience are a result of things they've been through and from situations. Sometimes it's chemical, sure, but it's not something you catch in the same way that bug is. Because then it implies as well that you can then treat it like a physical health problem, which, so then people think, okay, I feel like garbage. I struggle to get out of bed every day. So I'm going to see my GP, and he's going to give me some pills, and that'll fix it. It'll clear up.
I mean, is that not the case, though? If it is a chemical issue, then that's exactly what you should do.
It can help. It can help, but then there's more around it too. I think even when there's chemical imbalances, there is emotional stuff to kind of wedge through, almost always. And there's so much research at the minute going on about antidepressants, for example. So a recent study, I think it came out last year, did like some really clever like you call them like double blind studies. So like placebo studies.
Yeah, like when it's like double control, double placebo, something like that.
Yeah. So you do the placebo a couple of different ways, and it basically found that antidepressants were no more effective or less effective than a placebo.
That's interesting.
So it implies that the art of thinking, I'm going to take this and I'm going to feel a bit better, the belief was what actually maybe helps people. And that's a really interesting finding, just the belief that maybe I can get better. They kind of put that belief on a pill, but if you can shift that belief onto, okay, things are rough, but I know I've got the ability to get better. It's the same mechanism, but it's just coming from a different source.
I mean, I guess...
Because then you can run out of pills, right? But if you can believe in yourself, then you've always got that self.
Because it depends on the symptoms, right? Because for example, like I suffer from anxiety.
Yeah.
And I've never taken pills for it. I've just always decided not to. Like, I've never been diagnosed with it, but I know.
Yeah.
I just know. And when it's been the most severe, it has elicited a physical response. Now, the reason why I'm a bit not sure I 100% agree with you here and there is because when I look at the way it manifests itself, I'm like, no, this is clearly also a physiological issue. Because I never put myself in that state. The state materialized naturally, right? And then I found myself in a state of sort of panic and also physically feeling sick. Like, the best way I can describe anxiety for anyone who's not experienced it is like, imagine just this kind of like thumping sensation, this thing you can't ignore, you can't get past it, you can't escape it. It's just there, lingering, you know, and all the things that you're supposed to do, like, oh, take a shower, go for a walk, you know, just relax, watch something you like. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. You know, it's not going to do anything. And I thought I'd conquered it, but then, like, recently I had a day where it was pretty bad. Like, not as bad as it ever has been, but whatever it is, it's still there. And I do believe that every individual has a completely different setup. So, like, you can't be like, oh, well, pills work for this guy, so clearly it's going to work for this person. Like, no. But at the same time, I don't know, like, I guess this is like an ongoing thing where you have to try different things and just see what works. But, like,
I think this is a big thing. It's the messaging we use. So I think a lot of people have the belief, and I think a lot of professionals have an interest in giving, in fueling that belief that, oh yeah, you know, there's like a thing that's going to work. And I think for most people, you've got to try different stuff, and it is a long process sometimes. And sometimes it's a combination of a few different things, and annoyingly, it's also going to change across your life. So something that works for you when you're in your 20s, when you're in your 50s, if you experience the same problem, the same things might not work. You might have to adjust and change and adapt as you adjust and change. And I think that doesn't sound as sexy as like, hey, come do this therapy with me and you're going to feel great. We're going to give you all the techniques you could ever need, and off you go back into the world. I think maybe as a mental health academic, it's important to have a clear message to people. But sometimes that simplification sets the wrong precedent or an unrealistic precedent.
What you said before, I think, is key. It's not something that can be cured. I think if you're someone who struggles with mental health, it's never going to be something you can just like fix. Like, okay, now it's done. No worries. It's more like, I look at it a lot like, and I know this is majorly simplifying it, but let's say you break your leg to like a terrible degree, right? And let's say you're an athlete, right? You'll rehab, the knee will heal, but it'll never feel the same again. You'll never perform at the same level again. You might even have to quit your career and change and do other things, right? The point is, you have to live with that and work around it. Does it stop you living your life? That's up to you. That's completely.
I think that's the key there. That's the key.
That's the way I look at like mental health. And again, I know it's simplifying it because I know it can range, and sometimes it really can just prevent you from. If it's that, if the symptoms are that excessive or strong, I mean, yeah, it can completely paralyze you, to be honest.
Totally.
But if you're at least in control and able to be like, okay, I'm going to decide to do this, I'm going to decide to do that, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, then you've got half a chance at gaining control of your life and at least having it at bay and being like, right, well, I know this is the thing I'm always going to have to deal with, and I know there's different things I can do. Maybe I can take these pills, maybe I can go to therapy, maybe I can try these techniques, you know, and I'll probably have to keep reviewing it over time.
Yeah.
But you can still live a good life and not let it like prevent you from living your life, I guess is my point.
Totally. And so the kind of concept you're tapping into there is what we call recovery. So mental health recovery is very much not like, so there's like two versions of recovery, right? There's the clinical version, which is what clinical psychologists would be using. And this kind of went out of fashion around the year 2000. So in that version of recovery, it's like, okay, you've got like now got an absence of the symptoms and you're back to normal. Very well done. Congratulations. Hopefully never see you again. Bye. But that's obviously way too
Mm,
simplified. And like you said with the athlete example, it's just unrealistic. The athlete, it's not like he goes out there like, oh, thanks for fixing my leg. I'm back to complete normal, right? So now there's what's called um, sort of personal recovery.
right.
So that's about, and one of my favorite definitions is very much what you just said, which is this gentleman who's got like a schizophrenia
Mm,
diagnosis, and he's also an academic. He writes. He's like really into political theory. So, but he brought his recovery and his journey into that political sphere. It's really interesting. But he said, to me, recovery is living a meaningful life to a standard that's acceptable to me. It's about not being fixed or cured or like treated or any of these words. It's about I now have that degree of control and can live a life on my terms and enjoy myself.
I mean, that's the key,
Because
isn't it? Quality of life.
yeah,
What does that actually
totally,
look
totally.
like? Yeah.
It varies from person to person, doesn't
Mm,
it? So like for me, it would be being able to, like engage with music and like maybe get up and play sometimes and be able to enjoy art, maybe being able to have some sort of purpose where I'm helping some people in some capacity. To me, that's a good quality of life. Anything more than that, and I'm buzzing. Anything less, and I'm not
mm.
doing so great. And when we spoke to people, because this word is a tricky word to recovery, because of that implication, you can be recovered. Um, and all five people we spoke to for the book had issues with recovery as a word. Um,
And why was that?
someone said it's, I think because it implies that you can be recovered.
This is what I was alluding to. I don't know that you can
Yeah,
ever
yeah,
really
yeah.
fully be recovered. I mean,
And I think having that mindset's potentially damaging because you're thinking, okay, I need to get to where I'm fixed, but that might not be possible. It's just about, okay, okay, I've got this thing now. Sometimes it affects me. I've kind of got it for the most part under control.
mm,
It's left a massive impact. It maybe affected me for a month, a year, 10 years. So now it's part of my story. So how do I build myself and a life around that as well? It's a building block in the wall that is my life. I can't remove it or the wall falls down. Or if I try and ignore it and there's a problem with that, oh, that's a bit of an issue. Um, so someone said they preferred the phrase navigating.
hmm.
So when, okay, I've had this like issue with depression on and off across my life. So it's not about recovering from that and being fixed of that. It's about navigating and knowing that sometimes it's going to flare up, knowing what I'm going to do when that happens, but also knowing what I've got going for me and what my strengths are.
Absolutely. What would you say is the biggest misconception you've come across regarding mental health and awareness, etc.?
Mm. Mm. It's definitely that there's any kind of catch-all approach. So I'm from like a therapeutic background too, and in the NHS, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, that's seen as like the gold standard of treating people. Like we talk in therapy. I had CBT as a kid, hated
Why'd you
it.
hate it?
It's a it's a lot more sort of solution focused. So it's like, okay, you are anxious, so you need to do this, you need to do that. We're going to give you this homework you've got to fill
Ooh.
out. And I'm like, I'm 50 and I'm already doing homework, man. Don't give me more homework. Good God. Um, and because of the NHS, it was like those issues about the therapist being late every week, and I didn't feel like we got on very well. Um, so whereas now I practice person-centered counseling. So that's where it's more about exploration. So you've got something going on. Here's a space, hopefully where you feel safe and comfortable. Let's talk about it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what you should do because how the hell do I know? If I'm a therapist talking to someone, I see them for 50 minutes every week for maybe 10 weeks. How the hell do I know what's going to work and fix it?
That's 'cause-
I could read every book in the world on mental health. I still don't know what's going to help you, specifically you. So it's about understanding the person, showing them compassion. So giving them some like warmth, so listening, really listening. Because like let's think like I love my mates, and they're great at listening when I've got a problem, but they can't listen the way a therapist does because a therapist doesn't know you. So my friends, I can get partway through a story and they'll go, "Oh yeah, like that."
Mm.
Whereas a therapist, because they don't have that context, they don't have that sort of foreknowledge of your life. They've got to really listen. It gives you this like weird bubble outside of reality to like explore yourself. I just think, yeah, like, so I'm not saying that's the perfect way because some people would hate that. Like, I know people in my life, I know people I've worked with, but really hate just walking into a room and having to just open up about stuff and like explore stuff. And they want someone to just give them a solution. And that's absolutely fine. Cool. But that's why you need a bunch of different stuff. So I think the biggest misconception for me is that I think the biggest misconception comes from the people providing services, mainly the NHS, in thinking that you need just one thing that works for everyone.
Impossible.
You need an ecosystem of different
Mm.
therapies, right? So a wide range. So I've got vested interest. I think person-centered's great because I think it works for me. I've seen it work for other people, but I would never ever say, right, we should only ever do that then. And it's the same with like, so GPs prescribing, their first kind of go-to is, well, try these pills, and if not, then we'll do something else. I think you need to just be much more, take the time to know the person a bit, and then you can tailor whatever it is to them.
Absolutely.
Um, I think my favorite story of anyone ever with like doctors, though, this is a story of a great doctor. A friend of mine who does music was going through a rough time, various reasons. People were ill in his family, struggling. He had to kind of leave his job so he could take care of people. And the doctor literally wrote out a prescription saying this man needs at least 1 day a week where he can go off and do his music because that is his medicine. And he like wrote it out like it was a real prescription, gave it to him for it to like to give to his family to say like, right, you someone else needs to cover tonight because he's got to go do his music because that's what he needs. I think that's amazing, and it's so true too.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. Going back to what we
Mm,
covered in the very beginning about creativity,
mm.
like it really can be that source of therapy that you need.
For me, it's my own sort of personal therapy.
Yeah.
Um, it's where I work stuff out. So a lot of my songs, I've noticed, I ask big questions. Like that's kind of my starting point. It's like I'm either making statements or I'm like asking questions. And then I find that through writing it, through coming up with lyrics, through the sort of the way it sounds and the melodies and the harmonies, it starts looking for answers. Doesn't always find it, but just the process of asking the questions, I think, works for me.
What would you say is the most surprising thing you've learned in your mental health studies?
I think how much is out there that is like accessible
Like
to anyone in
resources?
terms of resources, but also just stories. I think for me, it's the value of story. I've always loved story, but I thought I was just kind of, it's a bit of an uphill battle. It's stories isn't the main concern of academia when it comes to psychology. Psychology is one of these kind of more kind of in the social science realm that tries to be like a STEM sort of hard science kind of subject, right? It likes numbers, it likes trying to
I was
prove
going to say,
stuff,
like,
quote unquote, prove
qualitative
stuff.
analysis doesn't
On
really help. Like, you
no,
can find themes and patterns, maybe, but, like, ultimately, it's, as you say, more about the story, which I would argue,
yeah,
I'm the same as you, I would argue the story is much more powerful and useful because it
yeah,
actually gives you scope and an understanding of where and why someone is in the position they're in. Whereas numbers, I don't know,
yeah,
can really tell you that. They can give you a quick snapshot of like, okay, this many people have this issue and it's linked to
yeah,
this, but that's it, really.
yeah. And again, you need an ecosystem. You need some numbers for some
Mm.
stuff, but there's a real push toward numbers. Um, Whereas I find a lot in stories, and I think it surprised me to see how much there's already out there in terms of stories that you can read, and the power that they hold too. I've learned stuff about myself from reading some of these mental health like journeys and stories. I know other people have found them really useful. Some people who've written like their account of what they've been going through have said like reading other people's stories really helped me because first of all I didn't feel alone. I realized, hold on, other people are going through this too. Um, it kind of validated how I felt. It was like it showed that, oh yeah, I do that sort of thing, and this person seems to be okay with the fact they're doing it, so I guess maybe I could feel okay with me doing it. Um, and I guess yeah, like feeling that compassion for the other person helps them to feel self-compassion too, which is really important.
What advice could you give to people struggling with their mental health?
Hmm. I think listen to your own mind and soul. I'm going to say, what is it looking for? What does it seem to need? And go from there. So if you think, okay, I'm struggling with mental health, I guess I'd better like go for therapy. I don't really want to, but that's what I'm meant to do. I don't think you're going to actually get from it what you're hoping. Because if you with therapy, you've got to be ready for it. You've got to be engaged for it to work. Any kind of therapy. Um, so I think listen to your soul, which is really wishy-washy. But that if as a person to person, this isn't, as a therapist, giving advice isn't what I do. So this is a person to person. It's listen to your soul and what's it need. So if it needs, I don't know, if I just had an hour or two a week to like sit and write my poems, if I just had an hour or two a week to like do my drawings that I love doing, that would really help make that time. Like sometimes you've got to fight for it and you think, oh, but I could meet up with a friend and, then they'd enjoy it. If having that time for yourself and your own sort of creative enjoyments, or even just, I want an hour to sit and like watch the films that I love. Sometimes you've got to fight to keep that time like secured in your schedule, but the value it can bring, oh my God.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I
Hmm.
had to do that last year because I was spending
Yep.
far too much time. I mean, I was overworked. It was what it was.
Mm.
It's the reason I've taken this new job. But it's
Yeah.
also like all my time was spent for the most part just trying to do creative stuff. And a lot of the time I
Yeah.
wasn't getting enough time because of work. And when I did
Mm.
get it, I didn't necessarily feel like I was getting enough done. But
Mm.
then it all kind of came to a head when I just didn't have any rest days. There was no like time where I
Yeah.
just sat at home and just like watched stuff
Yeah.
and like ate food or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like now I
Yeah.
do that more. Like I'm getting back into just watching like series and like being at
Yeah.
home playing games, like just hanging out. Like it's nice. It's like actually
Yeah.
I
And this is
won't
it.
go
And
out. I'll just chill. This is cool.
if it feeds your soul, then that's great.
Well, just it's
There's this,
sorry, go on.
no, yeah, it's like a misconception too, is that like, okay, I need to rest. I'm doing too much. I'm too busy. I need to rest. So therefore, I need to like sleep more, or I need to
Mm,
just be in bed, or like I need to be horizontal. Not necessarily so. Like, you speak to people who've like been signed off work because they're struggling, and they like maybe have a month away from work, and they're like, yeah, I'm getting a bit bored of being in the house. And it's like, well, why do you have to stay in the house? You're not signed off to like be bedbound. Like, go and feed your soul. Go and do what it is that makes you feel better. Because if not, it's not about resting in terms of resting and just lying there and sleeping. When it comes to mental health, I mean, sometimes people have got physical health stuff as well. That complicates it. So this is very simplified. But if it's around mental health, you gotta sometimes resting means doing something. So for me, resting is sitting reading a
mm.
book. Resting is picking up my guitar and just noodling around and doing dumb stuff. For me, resting can be playing songs that I might really going to an open mic is resting for me. If I've had a crappy day, I feel exhausted. Like the other night, I was shattered when I saw you, and I got up, played, got off, spoke to people, chatted. By the time I got home, I felt great. I felt like a person again. And so to me, that is rested, even though I'm doing something, because it feeds my soul. It's like restorative is the word I think I'd use.
Could not agree more with you.
Yeah.
What has mental health taught you about life?
Mm. I think everyone's got a story, and everyone has a different means of expressing that story. I think that's amazing. That's why we've got the art that we've got. So, like Vincent van Gogh didn't share his story by like writing poems that I know of, or like playing death metal songs, but he did it through painting. So that's his way of sharing his story, right? I think all art that's real art and not just sort of produced to, I don't know, to be adored, where it's produced from the soul, all good art is a story. And then everybody tells their story somehow, right? So like, I'm thinking like the older people in my life love just kind of chatting away and just talking about stuff that's happened. And that's them sharing their story. It's amazing. I think knowing that that can actually be valuable to someone to tell their story means I'm more open to listening to story. Yes, I've always loved reading. I've always loved like watching good TV shows with good stories and stuff, but the actual real human stories are out there. They're everywhere. And when you take the time to listen, you almost see that it means something to that person too. You get a great story out of it. You get like enjoyment for listening, but also it means something for someone that you're there listening to what they're saying and to what they've been through.
It was a big realization for me when I was struggling with this show and wondering like what the point of it was. You know, I mentioned earlier about obsessing over numbers and follower counts and why is the podcast not successful? You know. And then I looked at it and I was like, it is a success. I've produced nearly 300 episodes, and within that there are so many stories, so many life lessons, so many different stories. Like, something I'm fascinated by is just human psychology, people, life. I often look at life through the lens of like a child. Like, I'm fascinated by everything, and I love sitting and listening to people's stories and learning. Like, the best storytellers can make you feel like you're in the room. You know, like you're there, like you can picture everything. It's like reading a really good book. Like, you can just picture everything.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, you're left kind of inspired. And like, there've been many times like I've ended this show, and I've said this previously, like a broken record, but that I remembered why I was doing this, or I had inspiration to then keep going and doing stuff in my own life. And it's like the one constant that I've kept going throughout the years that I never stopped doing. And I don't know that I'll ever necessarily stop podcasting, because I enjoy talking with people, sharing their stories, sharing my stories, having conversations with people. You know, it's powerful. I wonder sometimes if maybe, you know, we might achieve some success down the line, but by then I will have built up like, I mean, I've already built up like this bank of just amazing stories of life lessons, of interviews, etc. But maybe the value is in those stories, is in that exploration of the human soul and what it means to go out there and be you.
It kind of reminds me of the metaphor you used earlier, which I love, of like, all you can really do, all you can control when it comes to creativity is, all right, this is what I've made. I'm going to hang it on this wall. You know, like, imagine it's a painting. I'm going to put it on this wall. Anyone that wants to come and look at it, you come. That's it. I've put it out there. Same with this, right? You've put it out there, and now people, if they come to it, get something from it. Amazing. But first and foremost, you've had this great experience and you've put it out there. And then it's out there if people want to engage with it.
I never looked at it like that, actually. Maybe
Mm.
there. And to be fair, when you look at like social media and the way a lot of apps are set up now, it's like if no one engaged, then it didn't have any value. And I think that's the wrong mindset to have, because just because no one saw it doesn't mean it wasn't impactful.
It's like the idea that if you went and saw like a small band, like say it's Manchester, they play in like Yes Basement. It's it's a good sized venue, but it's not the Ritz, it's not the Academy. It's like saying, well that band's no good because they're not playing Wembley. Well, it's bullshit. It doesn't alter the quality of what's going on.
Something I've been doing recently, because I love music. I find amazing, talented bands all the time, and I'm telling you, man, it's a matter of time until I have my own radio show, and I can just shout out amazing bands, interview amazing bands, get hopefully free tickets to see bands, and shine a spotlight on artists that truly deserve it, who aren't getting the recognition they deserve. So I started going out more and just watching bands. And like at GC, like they do 3 nights excuse me, of music, and a lot of these bands, like there'll be like some, like alright bands, like alright, cool, I'll keep drinking my pint, I'm like, yeah, nice. And then pretty much every show I've been to recently, there's been like that one band where you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm watching this for free. This is do you know what I'm saying? Like, this is brilliant. Or I'm like, this band, 5 years, it's going to happen. Probably less than that. There's been bands, artists I've had on the show. For example, I keep shouting out The Trusted. You should check them out, you'd like them. Finally getting some recognition. BBC introducing. Just reached 1 million streams, I think, everywhere. It blew my mind that they haven't got anywhere any sooner, but then that's the state of things. Like if they came, but like this, their sound is very early 2000s-esque, indie, pop, rock, like a bit of everything, right? If they came out then, they'd be huge. Yeah, I'm telling you, every song is a banger by them. Like truly, like every song is a banger. And I'm very picky when it comes to music. But my point is, like you said, like you don't have to pay over the earth to see good bands, good music. Often the best music is bands you've never heard of, and that's the thing. Like, there's still this big mindset of, like, I get it with people. Like, I had someone ask me recently, like, how many streams I've had for my latest single, and it's like, I don't have loads. But then, I don't have like loads of money for promotion, and I'm doing this off my own back. Like, it's, do you know what I mean? And like, I don't know. Like, maybe it's just not that great a song. I don't know. I mean, I like it. People seem to like it.
I like it.
But like, that's a thought that goes through my mind, and it doesn't make me feel any less good about the song. I just look at it as business. Like, there's so much out there.
Look at it from like, I think you got to look at it too, like, as if it was, say you saw, like, say you're in GC, this great band comes on, starts playing, you think, fuck, this is great. So, okay, you get them up on Spotify, and you listen to the song they've just played, and you're like, fuck, it sounds even better recorded, oh my god. And then you go, what? This has got, like, less than 1,000 listens on Spotify, what the fuck? I think when that happens, I go, I'm in on the ground floor here. Like, this is amazing. Like, dude, I'm lucky to be one of the few people who's heard this, right?
I lost count of how many times I felt like that recently.
Totally. So then, but apply that to yourself. Then, like, you can think, well, it doesn't lessen how great that song is.
I don't know, man. I feel like I'm the exception to the rule. I feel like when people, I don't know, I don't know that anyone listens to me and thinks, wow. I think people listen and go, oh, that's pretty cool, or that's kind of cool. But I don't think anyone's ever listening going, wow, he's the next big thing. I just don't believe that. Dude, I've been doing this six years. 6 years, everything, acting, music, voice acting, podcasting. If someone felt that way about me, I'd be somewhere by now. and
it's the right person thinking that, though, right? Like I said,
bro,
so
I've
much
met the right person 1 million times, and they still just well, just glanced at me and looked the other way. Like,
Maybe they're not the right person then.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's not supposed to happen for everyone, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it.
I think put out because the way I see it, so I don't have any music out. If I put a song out and oh fuck it, no, like I've already had this. This
Mm.
is the problem. So like at GC, sometimes you play a set. I think my favorite. I've got two favorite moments. Okay, I think they're on the same night. I was playing one song, and this run like I'd not brought any pals down with me. It's just me rocking up playing as per. And this girl I'd never met before, she got up and started dancing.
Cool.
I was like, whoa, this doesn't normally happen. And then someone else got up and started dancing because, like, yeah, I wanted to dance, so I'm going to get up and dance with you too. And then another person started. I'm like, it might only be three people. It's not, it's not a mosh pit at like.
I mean, your songs are
like
particularly brutal. Do you know what I mean? So,
no,
like
yeah, this is
proper
it.
brutal death metal acoustic.
Singer-songwriter, death metal, yeah. And like that was awesome because it's like spontaneous. It's not asked for, and I'm like, okay, something I've
Mm.
done has touched someone in some kind of way. That's amazing. That's all I ever want. And then afterwards, someone came up and said, "Oh, can I like listen to that song in here?" I'm like, I wrote it like 2 days ago.
Wow.
Like, and then a boyfriend came up and said, "No, yeah." She was like googling the lyrics, like trying to find it, and I'm like, that is like that's the greatest compliment. I could sell out Wembley, and that's still like that wouldn't lose its value as an amazing compliment of like I enjoyed the stuff you've done. I think this is my mindset, and I think it's probably protected me because it's like that thing I mentioned earlier of, oh, well, you never be a rock star, Rob. I can be okay with that if I choose what I get the value from them. So when you come up to me and say, dude, that song, I'd love to sing vocals on that. That means to me, you've heard that and gone, oh yeah, I'm enjoying this. I'd love to add something to this. That means loads to me. I have loads of value on that. If someone comes up and says, I was Googling your lyrics, trying to find your song, where the hell is it? Someone wants to listen to it. That's amazing. I love that so much. Someone gets up and starts dancing. Fucking incredible. So that's what I'm trying to keep hold of. So if I ever release music, I'd be trying to grab on tight to that mindset and not be like, oh, that's 15 listens in 2 weeks. I'm trying to grab onto the, well, even those 15 people, if one of them's a stranger and they've taken the time to listen to the full song, that
man,
means something to
absolutely.
me. It's basically a melody and some guitar that's come out of my head and ended up on someone's phone. And that's wild. I think you're fairly harsh on yourself, but I love that song. I love that song. It's
I
great.
appreciate that, man. I don't know. I guess it's hard sometimes. You go through different emotions with it.
Yeah.
I for the most part I feel the same way as you. Like particularly when it's people online who've checked out my stuff over the years, who hang in there, excited about the album.
Totally.
Strangers a few times when I've performed have said like, "Oh, you've got any music out?" Like that is cool. Like that's cool.
Yeah.
But I do also kind of look at what my life looks like day to day, and
Sure,
I just
sure.
get a bit caught up in my own head, I guess. But yeah, anyway, couple of final questions for you.
Ooh.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
I'm just going to bring it back to music again, and it's not strictly a piece of advice. Oh, this is getting convoluted. I'm going to roll with it. I had one friend, so it was in this time where I'd been told, you're not going to be a rock star, what's the point then? I'd like, so around that person, if I play guitar, I'd be like, well, what's the point? There's no point you even practicing because you're never going to be like world famous. So why bother even playing a few notes? And that's such a bullshit attitude. But I had this one friend who we'd met for a few weeks, a couple months, and then it slipped in that I play guitar. So or at that time, I used to play guitar. Well, that's amazing. Do you sing? I was like, oh yeah, not very well. And doing the usual sort of rigmarole of like, modesty, shyness, all that. And this person just said, oh, I'd love to hear something you've done. And that, I'd say, is a life-changing moment for me in who I am as a person. If it wasn't for that comment, I don't know where I'd be. Which sounds massive, so I'll give a little bit of explanation. It's that At the time, I thought I'd play music like in an evening. It was like this weird, like illicit thing to me. I'm like, well, it's not valued by the people that are closest to me right now. But I'm going to do it in my spare time when no one else is around. And I'll do it quietly so no one can hear it. I'm not disturbing anyone. I'm doing it for me. So it's still going on, this weird sort of underground movement
Science experiment.
of Rob playing Green Day covers, yeah, in his bedroom.
Oh, bless, man.
But I just having someone say, I'd love to hear it. That meant suddenly, okay, but at least one person values it. All right. And then when I'm playing, I've got a purpose behind it. So I'm not just like, I'm playing this because I like it, which is great and I think valuable, but knowing someone out there does want to listen to it, suddenly that changes like my mindset. And I'm like, okay, this does maybe have value. So maybe I can, and then I put more time into it and I enjoy it more. I send them like a quick snippet of a cover because I'm shy. So I'm like, "Ugh." Here's like a couple of lines and like, that's great. I love that. Yeah, anything else you've got, send it. And before you know it, I'm like writing more because suddenly I've got a reason to be writing again because there's someone who might want to hear it. I'm sending it, I'm feeling good about it. And it just like snowballed from there. And I think I became, because music allowed me to express who I am and like myself, because to me, music is an extension of me. I got more in touch with who I am, massively so, because that had faded away because of this kind of like circle of people I was around at the time. I was living as someone they'd want me to be rather than who I actually am, in a really kind of real, tangible sense. And so just that one comment of "I'd love to hear your stuff." Genuinely, it's not necessarily advice. So it's kind of flipping it on its head. It's not what can I say to people to help them out. It's more like what could you maybe do in a really tiny way that might help someone out massively. And that's if they're doing something creative and you just show that interest. You don't have to like tell them, whoa, you should write a book. You are the best person I've ever seen play guitar. You make the most incredible cakes of all. It's just saying, I really love that. Or like, hey, I'd love to like get the recipe for that thing you made the other day because it looked really good. It just shows this like interest. And I think that human connection is really important when it comes to creativity and just mental health.
Completely agree. What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
The importance of being yourself. Like as much as you can. There's so many different things that can impact that. And you know, you put different hats on in different roles. And I think but being in touch with who you are and being able to express that is like just key to life, I think. When you suppress that to like a massive degree, like it's dangerous.
Final question for you to round things up.
Ooh.
Do you have any upcoming projects or final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Nothing in the pipeline. I think, yeah, if you're interested and you've enjoyed this, by all means, take a look into the book. I've got a discount code I can send to you if you want to share that.
Absolutely,
around.
yeah.
It's not so expensive for an academic book. You can get a copy for about 20 quid, which I'm really happy with because I wanted it to be accessible as a word that I find important. So it's written in a way that's not meant to be so academic you can't understand it. I mean, my nan read it and she said, I really enjoyed it. And she's never read an academic book in her life. So I think that says, you know, it's not, don't be like put off by that. I think it's got a lot of value in the stories it tells. No, I'm just trying to be creative in my own time and like, yeah, explore a bit of creativity through my academic stuff too. Because I think just keeping challenging these ideas and definitions. Like a lot of psychology says you've got to be, if you're creative, it means you're making something that's useful. And that's bullshit. That's just nonsense, right? It's if I create a song and I never ever play it to anyone else in the world, I've still been creative. So I'm trying to challenge. I think my overall project at the bit is just keeping challenging that kind of weird approach that's everywhere. Final thoughts is you are creative. So whether that's because you make a recipe, you're following a recipe, but you think, oh, I'm just going to put a bit of paprika in there. I think that'd really help. Creative, you've been creative, you've created a thing. If you like looking after your garden or like growing stuff, you're being creative. If you solve a problem, that's creative. Think getting in touch with what it is instead of saying, oh, I'm not that creative, it'll never be in the National Gallery or I'm never going to be on the radio. That doesn't matter. Like, get in touch with what it is you enjoy doing that feeds your soul. And listen to that, yeah. I think as a take-home message, we all need to be better at listening to ourselves. Yeah, you are creative. Figure out what it is that you are creative with and like nurture that and hold it tight because it can get you through some real shit.
Some solid advice, Rob. Thank you so much for coming on the show, for sharing your experiences, your stories. Just wanted to say a massive thank you, man. It's been a real pleasure.
It's been good fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And as I mentioned before, I will include a link to your book and information so people can find you wherever they need to find you online. Thank you so much to everybody who watched and listened to this episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. If you have any questions for either of us, please let me know. I can make sure they get answered in the follow-ups. And be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.